Technocracy was founded in 1933 as a membership organization. It was founded based on research and education. The organization is not religion, and it's also not opposed to it. The organization is non-political, and in fact that's the only real restriction that we have on membership, is that active members of political parties, say people who hold office, are not allowed to belong to the organization. Technocracy chose as its symbol the monad, and that was intended to symbolize a balance between man and his environment. The word ecology and sustainability weren't really around at that time, and so Technocracy referred to it as a dynamic equilibrium. The human race has not been on the Earth for a very long time. The universe itself, according to Hubble's measurements, has been around for about 13.7 billion years. The Earth has been around for about 1/3 of that time, about 4.5 billion years. There's been life on Earth for at least 3.5 billion years. Of course, certainly most of it initially in the oceans. The Earth itself has had an oxygen atmosphere for about 1.7 billion years. Once it did have an oxygen in its atmosphere, that permitted an ozone layer to form, which permitted life on the land to begin. Probably the longest and most successful form of life on Earth was the dinosaurs, and they were here for about 165 million years. The human race, or hominids, more accurately, probably have been around for about 4 million years or so. The most successful form of hominids was certainly Homo erectus, who was around for about in the neighborhood of about 2 million years. Homo sapiens, us, we've been around for about 200,000 years. And all of recorded human history is within about the last 7,000 years. World population growth is indicative of major social change. From 1650 to 1980, world population has increased 8 times. And those at the end of that curve, at the upper end of it, are living far better than those at the beginning. Now, Technocracy has found that the growth in human population has been paralleled to the growth in energy consumption. The first major increase in energy consumption by humans occurred with the invention of agriculture about 12 to 10,000 years ago. They're somewhere in that neighborhood. The second increase began about 7,000 years ago with the development of urban civilizations and the forms of social organization that now exist. What we are seeing now is a new explosion of growth in energy consumption, signaling a new stage of human social organization. Technocracy has called this level a high-energy civilization. There are only 2 things in the universe, basically: matter and energy. Thermal energy is simply heat. Mechanical energy is the force that propels a car or anything that moves. Kinetic energy is energy contained in anything in motion. Potential energy is the stored capacity to do work. Electrical energy is what is used to power just about everything in our house. Magnetic energy is used to store information on a computer disk. Chemical energy is what powers a battery. Nuclear energy is useful for a variety of purposes, not all of them really good. A good, although not very complete, definition of energy is simply the capacity to do work. The end result of all energy transformations is waste heat that is dissipated into the environment. It is not possible to convert all energy into useful work. A percentage will always end up as waste heat. Technocracy defined extraneous energy as energy other than human or animal. It is extraneous energy that has dramatically increased over the last 200 years or so. This really took off with the invention of Watt's steam engine in 1763. Watt certainly didn't build the first steam engine, but he made them really workable. Today, the installed electric energy on North America is equal to approximately 40 slaves for every person at the flip of a switch. The electric power system on North America is the largest integrated system ever constructed by man. Technocracy has found that the conversion of extraneous energy into work is directly related to the rate of social change. What this really means is that people are being replaced with extraneous energy. Production increases as more extraneous energy is applied to the productive process. Man-hours per unit of whatever it is that's being produced declines, making the product cheaper. As the cost of the product declines, more man-hours are needed, even though the per unit amount declines until demand begins to level off, at which point the total man-hours begin to decline. Production becomes increasingly automated and fewer people are needed. In agriculture, in 1850, 60% of U.S. employment was 60% of U.S. employment. Today it's actually under about 2%. The automotive industry is typical of most U.S. manufacturing industries. In 1993, GM announced the intention to eliminate 90,000 jobs, 1/3 of all of GM's jobs. During the decade, coming on top of the elimination of 250,000 jobs since 1978. In the service industries, the telephone industry eliminated 179,000, almost 180,000 jobs between 1981 and 1988. In the book, The End of Work by Rifkin, in 1949, only 6% of the cotton crop was harvested mechanically. By 1964, it was 78%. 8 years later, 100% of the cotton was picked by machine. This generated a huge wave of poor people leaving the South for any place with jobs. The insurance industry overall employed about 2.3 million people in 2008. The health insurance industry in particular does not provide health care. Hospitals, doctors, and nurses provide that. The function of insurance is to spread risk among a large group of people. Often, people who believe they are covered find that when it is needed, they are not. So the industry creates more risk than existed in the first place. The only service the industry provides is collecting money and employing people. Rather than being a service industry, it is more like an anti-service industry. The U.S. spends nearly as much on defense as the rest of the world put together. It maintains no fewer than 720 bases in other countries. It also has 11 aircraft carrier groups. Each carrier group is a fleet all by itself. The closest nation to the U.S. in carrier groups is England with 2. Is the U.S. defending itself, or is it defending its price system? Well, what does all of this really mean? The fundamental premise of technocracy is that the application of energy and technology to our social system will ultimately destroy the price system. All of this is what is driving our standard of living. It is the reason we live so well. For the first time in history, people can live very well without having to work very hard for it. The problem is that we're trying to operate a price system. A price system is any system that distributes goods by commodity evaluation. A price system distributes goods and services by price through wages. A price system needs scarcity to function. A thing really only has value if it's scarce. If there was a way, if they could find a way to put meters on our noses and charge us for the air we breathe, they would. Without jobs, a price system can't function. Technocracy has stated that all forms of a price system will collapse due to the pressure of applied technology. All forms of a price system will collapse. Fascism, capitalism, socialism, communism, any system that uses money in any form will no longer be able to function. Technocracy has done no more than to state the obvious. If a price system is going to collapse, then we will have to find a way to organize and operate a society without one. It seems rather doubtful that the people of North America would willingly starve to death in the middle of one of the world's greatest supermarkets. Technocracy is the only design for a functional, advanced civilization in North America. What are some of the requirements for the operation of such a society? You want a balanced load operation. What that really means is that you calculate over a period of time how much of a particular product is going to be used, and then you simply even out your production so that you're producing what it is that people need. There are some times when they don't want things, and that way you can run the absolute minimum number of plants that you need to produce any particular type of product. Also, you want an optimum quality of goods and services, not as we do now where we design products to fall apart at the end of the last time payment. We want an efficient use of equipment and personnel. We want a maximum conservation of resources. We need excellent educational system. We need a high degree of public health. An energy accounting system would replace the feedback function of money. Energy is the most fundamental constituent of anything physical. Feedback function needs to be provided for. The various components of a system have to be able to accurately record what is required by them, as well as recording what they have done in commonly recognizable measurements. Every citizen would be provided with an energy certificate as a right of citizenship. The purchasing power of an energy certificate would be large, but not unlimited. For instance, you wouldn't be able to go out and buy your own 747. You might have some trouble parking the thing, and exactly how often would you need something like that? You could certainly fly in one. This implies that people, in terms of what we think of today, would be working for nothing. Why would they do that? There are two major motivations for human behavior: incentive and initiative. Incentive is an extrinsic motivation. No one was born needing someone else to motivate them. Rewards actually cause people to dislike what they have to do to get the rewards. And there is a lot of evidence of that. Initiative is an intrinsic motivation. It is something that you do because it pleases you to do it. A price system is organized around incentive and competition. A non-price system will have to be organized around initiative and cooperation. Where would we get all of these people willing to work for nothing? When you no longer have a price system, you no longer have banks, insurance companies, brokerage firms, tax collectors, or any of the trappings that go with money. Technocracy proposed that people should work 4 hours a day, 4 days a week, on a staggered schedule, with 78 days continuous vacation every year. Technocracy also proposed that people should begin work at 25 and retire at 45. A question once asked in a high school classroom during this lecture was, who would carry out the garbage? Who would do the dirty jobs? I was trying to formulate an answer in my mind when one of the other people in the classroom provided a better answer than I could have. He said that if it's a job that has to be done, if everyone took a turn, no one could complain. The answer is indicative, in fact, of the real solutions to real problems provided by those implementing the new system, no matter what it is that we might say now. The establishment of a non-price social system would immediately produce a far simpler society. Financial institutions and manipulations consume large amounts of what is currently involved in social operations. With all of that gone, far fewer people would be needed to operate the society. Along with the collapse of the price system would go the financial and political superstructure that sits on top of society in a price system. On one side of the chart, we might have the industrial sequences such as steel, autos, or computers, and so forth. On the other side, one might have the service sequences such as education, health, and entertainment. A person from each sequence would sit on the Continental Control Board. The function of a Continental Control Board would be budgeting for each planning cycle, how much energy would be required to operate and maintain the social system. They would also have to decide how many new structures and new equipment would be needed. Allowance would have to be made for new research and so forth. Technocracy Incorporated has no assumption of power theory for the simple reason those that will be needed in the new system will have to be the best qualified for the positions to operate the physical equipment that keeps us all alive. How would people be chosen to fill positions in such a system? If a vacancy appears in the hierarchical structure, those within the governed group would know those who are best prepared to fill the position. From among their group, they would select 3 or several who they felt would fit that position. From those selected, the people that position reports to would choose the person they felt best qualified. If the person did not work out, the process could be started again. How would decisions be made in such a society? An environmental impact statement examines all the impacts of every type surrounding a particular decision and outlines them in detail. A risk-benefit analysis is then performed that quantifies all possible directions and options. This is a proactive process. Those who would be involved or affected would be actively sought out, not simply notified of what has happened. The process would have to be completely open. The two major difficulties are time and the way the human brain works. Our complex society cannot stand the disruption caused by some sort of revolution. Once those operating systems have been scattered or dissipated in some way, reconstituting the structure would be very difficult. How many people know how to restart a paper mill, a refinery, a food processing plant, a steel mill, restart an electrical substation, or any of the myriad components of our complex world? Those who know are few and getting fewer. The operation of a price system has become so ingrained into our thinking that we are incapable of imagining a society without it. Money was invented by humans. Now we have been completely captured by it. It controls us rather than simply being a tool to facilitate social functions. Our society is so completely dominated by it, many people think it is all that matters. We have become addicted and enslaved. There are those who feel, at least by what they propose to do, that if technology is causing our system to fail, we would be better off without the technology. With technology, North America is currently supporting nearly 300 million people. Without that technology, the same area was supporting possibly 5 to 15 million at a Stone Age level. It is clear that without the technology, North America would be looking at a disaster greater than a nuclear war. To make things even worse, the skills of those natives when Europeans first began colonizing no longer exist among the population. While human beings are very smart and inventive, they have blind spots that are serious. People have great difficulty seeing problems that accumulate slowly. Our senses are attuned to the crack of a twig in a quiet, dark forest. We would have been a lot better off if we had gotten rid of the price system when technocracy first made its proposals in the 1930s. In the interim, we have dissipated our resources to a very large extent. A price system wants profits. The way they get them is by consuming as fast as possible with the maximum amount of waste. When we look at the proposals put forward by activists, what we see are all sorts of ideas for fixing the price system. This is exactly what Roosevelt did in the 1930s. What we have seen in the last few decades is the dismantling of all of these fixes by those making the most money because they wanted more. Fixing the price system is similar to fixing a shattered window glass that has broken by gluing the pieces back together. Humanity has a chance now to move to a whole new plane of social organization. No constitution would be needed because the means of controlling people, money, would no longer exist. The only way one could distinguish himself from his fellows is by becoming an outstanding contributing member of the society. With the end of the price system goes around 95% of any reason to do harm to another, but plenty of good reasons to do no harm.